From Lisa Fontagrives in the 1930s to Bella Hadid in the 2020s, the face of the supermodel has changed with the times, reflecting not only fashion trends but also society's evolving ideals of beauty. In this video, we will explore the transformation of the supermodel face through every decade of the 20th century, from the earliest pioneers like Lisa Fontagrives and Evelyn Nesbit to today's Instagram-fueled icons like Bella Hadid. Let's trace how beauty standards have shifted, reflecting the cultural mood of each era. Chapter 1. The First Supermodels. The concept of the modern supermodel began to take shape in the 1930s, largely thanks to Lisa Fontagrives, widely regarded as the world's first true supermodel. Her career, which spanned more than 2 decades, helped establish the model as an integral part of the fashion industry. With her tall, statuesque frame, poised elegance, and ethereal beauty, Lisa set the standard for what it meant to be a supermodel. She wasn't just a mannequin for clothes, she brought artistry and personality to her photos, which graced the covers of nearly every major magazine of her time, including Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and Time. Lisa's partnership with photographers like Irving Penn and George Hoyningen elevated fashion photography into fine art. She understood the camera in ways that few models before her had, bringing a grace and fluidity to her poses, and photographers adored her. Her versatility allowed her to adapt to various styles, from the refined elegance of haute couture to the avant-garde trends of the 1940s, making her a favorite among designers and editors alike. Lisa wasn't the first woman to reach iconic status in the modeling world. Evelyn Nesbit, whose career began around 1900, is often referred to the original supermodel of her era. Nesbit's fame extended beyond modeling. She became a household name due to her involvement in the trial of the century, a notorious scandal that rocked the United States. Her soft Victorian beauty made her the ideal muse for artists and photographers of the time, and her images were some of the earliest to be widely circulated in magazines and postcards. While Evelyn Nesbit's beauty epitomized the ideal of the early 20th century, delicate, demure, and doll-like, Lisa's beauty represented a departure from this look. Her look was modern, refined, and almost regal, aligning with the changing ideals of beauty in the post-Depression era. Fashion photography too was evolving, moving away from the simple static poses of the early 1900s to a more dynamic and artistic representation of women. As the 1940s rolled in, another star emerged in the modeling world. Dorian Leigh. Known for her sultry, bombshell appeal, Dorian became one of the most photographed women of the era. Her dark hair, piercing eyes, and sophisticated allure made her a favorite for high fashion designers and magazines. Dorian's rise to fame also coincided with a shift in the beauty standards of the time. The glamorous movie star aesthetic was taking over, and Dorian embodied this look perfectly. Dorian's most famous work was perhaps her involvement in the Fire and Ice campaign for Revlon in 1952, a legendary ad that redefined how beauty products were marketed towards women. With her perfectly coiffed hair, bold red lip, and flawless complexion, Dorian represented the new kind of woman, confident, alluring, and in control. But it was her ability to adapt to various roles in front of the camera, from a sultry vixen to an elegant debutante, that made her one of the first truly recognizable supermodels. Chapter 2. The Glamorous 1950s. The 1950s marked a golden era in fashion as the world emerged from the shadows of war into a period of prosperity and optimism. Glamour became the key ingredient in both fashion and beauty. Models like Dovima, Susie Parker, and Jean Pachette and Wilhelmina Cooper dominate the runways and magazine covers, embodying the quintessential 1950s beauty ideal: polished, sophisticated, and effortlessly glamorous. Dovima, the queen of Hollywood glamour. At the height of the 1950s fashion was Dorothy Virginia Market Juba, better known as Dovima. With her elongated neck, striking features, and aristocratic air, Dovima was the epitome of Hollywood-style glamour. She was often described as one of the most elegant women of her time, becoming a muse for some of the most celebrated photographers, including Richard Avedon. In 1955, Avedon captured Dovima in one of the most famous fashion photographs of all time, Dovima with Elephants, which showcased her poised figure against the unlikely backdrop of circus elephants. This iconic image helped cement her status as one of the greatest fashion models of the 20th century. Dovima's look was about more than just beauty. It was about fantasy, artistry, and otherworldly elegance that defined the 1950s fashion aesthetic. Her angular features, dramatic poses, and air of mystery made her one of the first models to be treated as a celebrity, ushering in the era of the supermodel. Susie Parker, the model turned movie star. Susie Parker, with her striking red hair, was another top model of the 1950s who became a household name. Standing at nearly 6 feet tall, she exuded confidence and sophistication. Known for her work with Vogue and Harper's Bazaar, Parker was among the first to blur the line between model and celebrity, crossing into Hollywood films. She starred in movies such as Funny Face and Kiss Them For Me, proving the era of models being simply mannequins was fading away. Now they were cultural icons with a foothold in both fashion and film. Susie Parker's crossover into film also highlighted a growing trend, the model as a celebrity. With her natural charisma and classic beauty, she symbolized a transition into a more media-driven form of fame, paving the way for models to become household names. Jean Patchett, the icon of refined elegance. Jean was another influential figure during the 50s, known for her sharp, sophisticated look. Her dark brows, perfectly arched lips, and high cheekbones became a template for the refined, polished beauty of the time. Patchett's presence on magazine covers and in fashion editorials helped define the decade's preference for classic, timeless elegance. Jean's distinct, almost aristocratic features set her apart from other models. Her face became synonymous with high fashion elegance of the 1950s. With photographers like Irving Penn behind the camera, Jean's images are some of the most iconic fashion photographs of the era, representing an aspirational, idealized version of post-war femininity. Wilhelmina Cooper, the business-savvy beauty. While Dovima and Susie Parker may have ruled the fashion pages, Wilhelmina Cooper was another 1950s icon who would go on to shape the modeling world in ways no one could have predicted. With her dark, exotic beauty and impeccable sense of style, Wilhelmina became one of the most sought-after models of her time, appearing on the cover of Vogue an impressive 27 times. But her legacy would come later. She founded Wilhelmina Models in 1967, one of the world's top modeling agencies. Wilhelmina Cooper beauty was undeniable, but it was her business acumen that truly set her apart. She saw the potential in the modeling industry and created an empire, nurturing the careers of future supermodels. Her transition from model to mogul made her one of the most influential figures in the fashion industry, changing the way models were treated and giving them more control over their careers. These women weren't just beautiful, they were symbols of the 1950s post-war optimism and the era's love of refinement and sophistication. The makeup of the time emphasized bold red lips, winged eyeliner, and perfectly coiffed hair, all contributing to the glamorous movie star quality that fashion demanded. The supermodel of the 1950s wasn't just a mannequin, she was a personality, someone who embodied the luxury and elegance of the age. Chapter 3: The Mod Revolution of the 1960s. The 1960s brought a seismic shift in fashion. As the youth culture took center stage, no longer was the fashion world ruled by the polished glamour of the 50s. Instead, the new decade embraced bold patterns, experimental designs, and a rebellion against the traditional beauty standards. At the heart of this revolution were two women who became the faces of change, Jean Shrimpton and Twiggy. These models helped redefine the supermodel image, ushering in a new era of playful, youthful, and more casual beauty. Jean Shrimpton, the original supermodel of the 1960s. Jean Shrimpton, often referred to as the Shrimp, was one of the most recognizable faces of the 60s with her long legs, fresh-faced beauty, and effortlessly chic style. Jean represented a new type of model who wasn't just glamorous, she was relatable. Her natural look, characterized by minimal makeup and soft hair, was a departure from the high-maintenance beauty of the previous decade. Jean's look was timeless, yet she was a symbol of the swinging 60s when fashion was all about freedom, youth, and individuality. In 1965, Jean Shrimpton caused a media sensation when she appeared at the Melbourne Cup in Australia, wearing a short mini dress with no gloves, hat, or stockings, defying the strict fashion norms of the time. This single outfit marked a significant turning point in fashion history, symbolizing the freedom and rebellious spirit that the mod revolution represented. Jean's influence wasn't just confined to the pages of fashion magazines. She was shaping cultural trends and challenging societal expectations. The mod revolution and London's swinging scene. The 1960s saw London become the epicenter of global fashion, with Carnaby Street and King's Road at the heart of the youth-driven revolution. This mod subculture, defined by its sharp, tailored looks and geometric patterns, took over runways, magazines, and the streets. This was fashion for the young and rebellious. Rejecting the formality of the past, the mod look was all about clean lines, bold prints, and a certain playful yet minimal aesthetic. It was a fashion movement that perfectly encapsulated the cultural shift toward a more liberated, expressive, and fun-loving society. Twiggy, the ultimate face of the 1960s mod look. But if there was one face that truly defined the mod revolution, it was Twiggy. Born Leslie Hornby, Twiggy took the world by storm at just 16 years old. With her boyish figure, pixie haircut, and oversized eyes framed by thick, spidery lashes, Twiggy redefined beauty in the 60s. Her look was a radical departure from the curvier, more glamorous models of the previous decade. Instead, she embodied a quirky, youthful, and androgynous aesthetic that perfectly suited the mod fashion movement. Twiggy's wide-eyed, almost doll-like appearance became synonymous with 60s fashion. She was often photographed in bold, geometric dresses and colorful tights, which reflected the playful, youthful spirit of the decade. Her look, while androgynous, still had a softness that appeared to both high fashion and street style. Twiggy wasn't just a model, she was a cultural phenomenon. Her fame skyrocketed so quickly that by 1966, she had been named the Face of 1966 by the British press. The cultural impact of Twiggy. Twiggy wasn't just a model, she became a cultural icon. Her rise to fame coincided with the explosion of youth culture and the influence of pop music. She was more than just a face in fashion magazines. She was a symbol of the era's shift towards individuality and the breaking of traditional beauty standards. Twiggy's influence even extended to Hollywood, where she starred in films like The Boyfriend. Her unique look, effortlessly cool and impossibly chic, captured the imagination of a generation. She was a muse for designers like Mary Quant, whose mini skirts and mod dresses became emblematic of the 60s fashion revolution. Legacy of the mod look. Twiggy's influence can still be felt today. The mod look, characterized by bold eyeliner, clean lines, and youthful silhouettes, continues to inspire designers and beauty trends. Models like Alexa Chung and even celebrities like Zoe Kravitz have channeled elements of Twiggy's style in their own fashion choices, proving that her impact on the fashion world is truly timeless. The mod revolution wasn't just a fleeting moment in fashion history, it was a cultural shift that redefined the relationship between youth, beauty, and fashion. Chapter 4, the Glamazon Era, 1970s and 1980s. By the 1970s and 1980s, the supermodel was no longer just a face in a magazine. She became larger than life, embodying both beauty and power. The Glamazon era was born, characterized by tall, statuesque models with bold personalities and an undeniable presence. These women weren't just seen, they dominated every room they entered, whether on the runway, in ad campaigns, or on fashion magazine covers. Jerry Hall, with her towering frame and wild blonde hair, defined the glamour of this era, while Iman introduced a new level of sophistication and diversity to the supermodel world. Together, they shaped the glamorous, high-octane aesthetic that would dominate fashion for years to come. Jerry Hall, the blonde bombshell. Jerry Hall was the ultimate glamazon, with her sky-high stature, cascading blonde hair, and unapologetic attitude. Discovered by fashion photographer Norman Parkinson, Hall quickly rose to fame in the 70s. Her image embodied the extravagance and opulence of the decade, with her striking beauty and magnetic charm. Hall's personality was just as captivating as her looks. She was known for her confidence, wit, and ability to command attention in any room. She was more than just a model. She became an icon of the 70s and 80s glamour, gracing the covers of Vogue and Cosmopolitan. Hall's fame wasn't just limited to the world of fashion. Her high-profile romance with Mick Jagger and her presence in the rock and roll scene made her a household name beyond the runway. She was a perfect embodiment of the era's fusion of music, fashion, and celebrity culture. Her beauty combined with her bold personality made her one of the most famous faces of the glamazon era. Iman, the trailblazer of diversity. While Jerry Hall defined the glamour of the 70s, Iman brought a new level of sophistication and diversity to the supermodel world. Born in Somalia, Iman's regal beauty and statuesque frame made her an instant sensation when she was discovered in 1975. Her exotic look and flawless presence captivated designers and photographers alike, leading her to work with the biggest names in fashion, including YSL, Halston, and Versace. Iman's entry into the fashion world was a pivotal moment, as she broke down barriers for models of color in an industry that had long been dominated by a narrow definition of beauty. Iman wasn't just a groundbreaking model, she was also a fierce advocate for diversity in fashion. Her work with YSL, particularly in his African Queen collection, highlighted her ability to bring both grace and strength to the runway. Iman's beauty was not just about her striking features, it was also about her elegance and poise that she carried with her, both on and off the runway. The athletic beauty of the 1980s. By the time the 1980s arrived, a new kind of supermodel was emerging, one that embodied an athletic physique and health, reflecting the workout culture that dominated the decade. Elle Macpherson, famously nicknamed The Body, represented this shift. Her athletic, sun-kissed look became the new ideal beauty. As women aspired to her fit, toned physique, Cheryl Tiegs, another icon of the era, brought the all-American athletic beauty to the forefront, gracing the cover of Sports Illustrated and Time magazines. The rise of fitness culture in the 80s shaped the way models were perceived. The glamazon of this decade was not only tall and statuesque, but also athletic and strong. Cindy Crawford, who rose to prominence in the late 80s, was a perfect example of this shift. With her signature mole and striking features, Crawford embodied the era's fusion of glamour and fitness, making her one of the most famous faces of the 80s and 1990s. The 80s supermodel explosion. The Trinity. The 1980s and early 1990s saw the emergence of a supermodel phenomenon unlike anything the world has ever seen before, known as the Trinity. Naomi Campbell, Linda Evangelista, and Christy Turlington took the fashion world by storm. They weren't just models, they were international celebrities who transcended the runway. Their glamorous looks, combined with their strong personalities, made them the most sought-after models of the era. They graced the covers of every major magazine, walked in the most prestigious shows, and became the faces of global ad campaigns. Naomi Campbell, with her fierce walk and stunning features, became a trailblazer as one of the first black models to reach supermodel status. Linda Evangelista was famous for her ability to transform her look with every haircut and campaign, famously declaring that she wouldn't get out of bed for less than 10 grand a day. Christy Turlington, with her timeless beauty and serene grace, brought an air of sophistication to every shoot and runway. Together, they defined the supermodel era, embodying the height of fashion, beauty, and fame. The supermodel legacy. The Glamazon era of the 70s and 80s left an indelible mark on the fashion industry. These supermodels weren't just fashion muses, they were symbols of empowerment and beauty that transcended time. Their larger-than-life presence continues to inspire the fashion world today. As the legacy of Jerry Hall, Iman, Cindy Crawford, and the Trinity lives on in the new generation of models who still look to these trailblazers for inspiration. The era of the Glamazon wasn't just about beauty, it was about confidence, strength, and redefining what it meant to be a supermodel. Chapter 5. The Dark and Minimal 1990s. As the excess and opulence of the 80s faded, the 1990s ushered in a stark, minimalist aesthetic that stood in stark contrast to the larger-than-life glamour of the previous decade. The heroin chic look took center stage, defined by a deliberate rawness, gaunt frames, and an almost disheveled appearance. This era of fashion was reflective of the cultural shifts happening globally. Grunge music, alternative youth movements, and a rejection of polished perfection were all part of the 90s rebellion. Kate Moss, with her waifish figure and sunken cheeks, became the face of the movement, and in many ways defined the era's minimalist approach to beauty. Kate Moss, the anti-supermodel. Kate Moss was a supermodel unlike anything the world had seen before. At just 5'7", she didn't have the statuesque figure of the Glamazon models of the 80s. Instead, her waif-like body, pale skin, and hollow cheeks set her apart. Discovered at the age of 14, Moss quickly rose to fame in the early 1990s, particularly after being featured in a controversial Calvin Klein ad campaign that captured the essence of the heroin chic, a term used to describe the grunge-inspired look that dominated high fashion during this period. Kate Moss's image was a deliberate departure from the supermodel perfection of Cindy Crawford and Naomi Campbell. She was raw, almost fragile, embodying the angst and minimalism of the 90s. Kate Moss's Calvin Klein ads in 1992, particularly the ones alongside Mark Wahlberg, became iconic, epitomizing the stripped-back aesthetic of the time. Her appearance in these black and white, understated images showed that beauty didn't need to be glamorous or polished. It could be raw, even vulnerable. This rejection of excess was in sync with the grunge movement that had taken over the music world, with bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam leading the change. Kate Moss, with her tousled hair, unmade face, and androgynous body, became the face of this cultural shift. The rise of heroin chic. The term heroin chic was coined as the new look began to dominate fashion. Models with pale skin, dark circles under their eyes, and gaunt figures became the ideal for many designers, particularly in high fashion. This aesthetic was a sharp contrast to the hyper-feminine and athletic supermodels of the 80s. Instead of glossy airbrush images, the 90s embraced a darker, edgier style that mirrored the disillusionment felt by much of the younger generation. While heroin chic was controversial, criticized for glamorizing unhealthy lifestyles, it undeniably left its mark on the fashion industry. Photographers like Corinne Day and Jürgen Teller played a major role in popularizing this aesthetic, capturing models in unpolished raw settings that felt more documentary than high fashion. Their work moved away from the fantasy and perfection that had defined the 80s and towards a more grounded street-style approach. The minimalist, almost careless beauty of the models reflected a broader cultural trend towards grunge, alternative rock, and a rejection of consumerism and excess. Minimalism takes over the fashion world. Alongside the rise of heroin chic, minimalism became the defining aesthetic of the 90s. Designers like Calvin Klein, Helmut Lang, and Prada led the charge, showcasing collections that emphasize clean lines, neutral tones, and understated elegance. The focus was no longer on over-the-top glamour, but rather on simplicity, with models often walking the runway in barely their makeup, slick-back hair, and minimalist clothing. This pared-down approach to fashion extended to the beauty standards of the era as well. Gone were the perfectly coiffed hair and red lips of the 80s. In their place was a more natural, almost undone look. Calvin Klein's slip dresses and minimalist aesthetic captured the essence of the 90s fashion. Stripped of excess, it focused on the purity of form and simplicity of style. Helmut Lang's sleek utilitarian designs, along with Prada's minimal tailored silhouettes, became the uniform for the fashion forward in the 90s. This shift was not just about clothes, it was about a broader cultural movement towards introspection, simplicity, and an aversion to the flashy consumerism of the previous decade. The backlash and legacy of heroin chic. Despite its dominance in the early 90s, the heroin chic trend faced significant backlash. Critics argue that it glamorized unhealthy, even dangerous lifestyles, promoting an unrealistic and harmful beauty standard. The fashion world began to respond, with designers and industry insiders acknowledging the darker implications of the trend. By the late 1990s, there was a visible shift back towards a healthier, more polished look, as the industry moved away from the raw, minimalist look of the early 1990s. Chapter 6. The Return of Glamour in the 2000s. At the turn of the millennium, fashion took a noticeable turn back to glamour. After the raw minimalism of the 90s, the early 2000s reintroduced a sense of luxury, opulence, and femininity to the runway. At the forefront of this transformation was Giselle, a model whose athletic figure, bronze skin, and flowing beachy waves became the epitome of the early 2000s beauty. With her natural allure and radiant confidence, Giselle ushered in a new era of supermodels, marking a departure from the heroin chic look and signaling a return to the sensuality and glamour that had dominated earlier decades. Gisele Bündchen, the new face of glamour. Discovered in the late 1990s, Giselle quickly rose to prominence as the face of the early 2000s fashion scene. Her sun-kissed complexion, toned physique, and easygoing beauty redefined what it meant to be a supermodel. Gone were the days of waifish frames and dark circles. Giselle represented health, athleticism, and a carefree luxury that captivated both the fashion industry and the public alike. She became a global icon, gracing the covers of Vogue, Elle, and Harper's Bazaar, and headlining campaigns for top designers like Versace, Dolce & Gabbana, and Chanel. At the time when fashion was craving a more natural yet still glamorous aesthetic, Giselle's beauty was refreshing. Her Brazilian background gave her an exotic appeal, while her relatable charm and effortless sexiness made her a favorite among both high fashion designers and commercial brands. She became synonymous with the return of glamour, embodying the perfect balance between aspirational beauty and a more laid-back, natural look. The Victoria's Secret fashion show phenomenon. Giselle's role as one of the top Victoria's Secret angels further solidified her position as the supermodel of the 2000s. The annual Victoria's Secret fashion show, which had become a cultural phenomenon by the early 2000s, was the perfect platform for Giselle's brand of glamour. Walking the runway in extravagant lingerie, paired with over-the-top wings and dazzling smile, Giselle and her fellow Victoria's Secret angels like Adriana Lima and Heidi Klum represented a new kind of beauty ideal. It was powerful, sexy, and unapologetically feminine. The Victoria's Secret fashion show wasn't just about lingerie. It was a spectacle of fashion, beauty, and celebrity. Giselle's presence in the show brought an elevated sense of glamour to the brand. Her athletic, toned body became the ideal of the decade, marking a shift away from the fragile figures of the 90s to a fuller, healthier image of femininity. The Victoria's Secret angels became the ultimate representations of aspirational beauty, and Giselle was the crown jewel. The commercialization of supermodels. One of the defining characteristics of the 2000s supermodel era was the blurring of the lines between high fashion and commercial success. Supermodels like Giselle were no longer confined to the runway or elite fashion magazines. They were everywhere, from high-end campaigns with Chanel to mass-market endorsements for Pantene and H&M. The supermodel had become a commercial powerhouse. Giselle in particular transcended the traditional boundaries of modeling, becoming one of the highest-paid models of all time. Chapter 7. The Sculpted Aesthetic of the 2020s. As we move into the 2020s, the face of the supermodel has once again transformed. reflecting a new era dominated by social media and the rise of the Instagram look. Gone are the minimalist aesthetic of the 90s and early 2000s. Today, the supermodel face is all about precision, definition, and sculpting. Bella Hadid, Kendall Jenner, and other models who dominate both the runway and Instagram epitomize this look. With their perfectly contoured cheekbones, full lips, and sharp jawlines, beauty is now more curated than ever before, shaped by a combination of makeup techniques, digital filters, and even cosmetic enhancements. Bella Hadid, the face of the sculpted aesthetic. Bella has become the poster child of the sculpted aesthetics of the 2020s. With her razor-sharp cheekbones, fox-like eyes, and pillowy lips, Bella's face seems almost unreal in its perfection. But her look wasn't always this way. Bella has openly spoken about her transformation over the years, acknowledging her decision to undergo cosmetic enhancements, including her rhinoplasty. Her dramatic metamorphosis has captured the public's attention, making her one of the most photographed and sought-after models of the world. Bella's transformation has sparked countless conversations about the role of cosmetic surgery in today's beauty standards. While her look is undeniably striking, it raises questions about the pressure to conform to a certain ideal of perfection, an ideal that is increasingly influenced by social media filters and the widespread availability of cosmetic procedures. Bella's sculpted beauty has become a symbol of this new era, where the line between natural and enhanced is often blurred. And it is interesting to see the before and after with her eyes. I'm trying to figure out how her eyes look so much different and pulled. Maybe she, I don't know, had a partial facelift or something. Kendall Jenner, the rise of the social media supermodel. Alongside Bella, Kendall Jenner is another figure in the rise of the sculpted aesthetic. As part of the Kardashian-Jenner dynasty, Kendall has been in the public eye for most of her life, but her role as a supermodel and influencer has catapulted her to a new level of fame. Kendall's look is the epitome of the Instagram face: perfectly contoured cheeks, lifted brows, and impeccably full lips. But unlike the glamazon supermodels of the 80s or the waifish icons of the 90s, Kendall represents a new kind of beauty, one that is both digitally curated and highly marketable. Kendall Jenner is often referred to as one of the first social media supermodels, a term that reflects the power of platforms like Instagram to shape beauty standards and influence the fashion world. With over 300 million followers on social media, Kendall has mastered the art of self-promotion, using her platform not only to model but also to curate a specific beauty image, one that is polished, aspirational, and always on trend. Her influence extends beyond the runway. Kendall's Instagram presence has become just as important, if not more, than her work in traditional fashion. The power of Instagram and the perfect face. With the rise of Instagram, beauty has become more visual, more instantaneous, and more globally accessible than ever before. Platforms like Instagram have allowed models to bypass traditional gatekeepers, using their social media profiles to craft their own images and build their own brands. But this has also led to the rise of the hyper-curated perfect face, one that is defined by sharp angles, full lips, and flawless skin. Filters and editing apps like Facetune have amplified this trend, allowing anyone to achieve the Instagram look with the swipe of a finger. The Instagram face, a term coined to describe the heavily contoured, flawless aesthetic popularized on the platform, has now permeated mainstream beauty culture. Makeup techniques like baking, contouring, and highlighting have become essential for achieving this look, and filters have further distorted the idea of natural beauty. The face of the 2020s is not just influenced by genetics or makeup artistry, but by technology, specifically technology that allows us to edit and enhance our images to fit the ever-evolving beauty standard. And it is crazy, some of those filters, the before and afters, and the difference you can make to make you look like a completely different person. The role of cosmetic enhancements in the 2020s. Another major factor in the rise of the sculpted aesthetic is the increasing normalization of cosmetic enhancements. From lip fillers to Botox to jawline contouring, procedures that were once taboo are now openly discussed and often flaunted by both celebrities and influencers. Models like Bella Hadid and Kendall Jenner have sparked trends that have led millions to seek out these treatments, with young women aspiring to achieve the same flawless, contoured features they see on their Instagram feeds. The pressure and challenges of the sculpted aesthetic. While the sculpted aesthetic has become the dominant beauty standard of the 2020s, it has also come with its own set of challenges. The pressure to look perfect in every photo, the constant comparison to digitally enhanced images, and the rise of body dysmorphia are all side effects of the social media age. For many, the desire to achieve the Instagram face leads to a cycle of insecurity and the pursuit of perfection that can never be truly attained. From Lisa Fonsagreves to Bella Hadid, the supermodel face has evolved dramatically over the last century. Each decade brought its own definition of beauty, shaped by fashion, culture, and technology. And as we look to the future, we will continue to chase perfection. Or will we embrace a more diverse and natural standard of beauty? Only time will tell. And let me know in the comments below, do you have a preference on certain decades for the supermodel look? It'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 2 years in terms of the supermodel, what the aesthetic will be. Let me know in the comments below if you have any ideas of what you think it might be. And thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out some of my other vintage videos.